Food has never tasted so good, which is bringing me a lot of joy, but it's also dangerous. It's known that appetite changes with pregnancy, but I feel like I'm really relating to all of those who call themselves foodies. And I've had to get clever because I still care about being and looking fit. So in this episode, I'm sharing what I've done in my suggestions if you're a foodie in fitness, starting with what type of foodie you are, because there are different kinds, and how to manage it while being fit. So let's get into it. And a quick reminder that the next class of Create Your Shape starts on July 27th. If you're listening to this in 2026, every time I launch Create Your Shape, it is very intentional with the timing. And it's really perfect to start now because you're post-summer, and the first 2 months, we really focus on priming your body, building muscle, learning the tools, learning nutrition, setting up your routine that runs on autopilot, giving you energy. So if you have vacations in August or it's crazy in September with getting back to school, this is intentionally aligned with that. And then you're in a great position come fall to complete your deficit phase before Thanksgiving, before travel, before the holidays. So then you can go into the holidays wearing that sparkly dress, that sleeveless top when you take off the furry jacket. I just have all of these visions of your holiday party outfits, but really feeling confident. And then you're set up to go into the new year with a new baseline. So it really does start now. And if you are a longtime listener, I have so many people who have been listening to this podcast for months, for years. And then they're like, oh, okay, I think now I'm ready because you guys are planners. Then I just gave you the outline in the plan to get started and why it's intentional to get started at the end of July. But when you get signed up now, you do get a few of the pieces right away to start working on loosely with the foundational guidelines, with your nutrition, but then also the Create Your Shape training program. So you can get started and join us at the link in the show notes, or go to jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape. And then if you are more of a one-on-one type of person, I work with one-on-one clients, which honestly in Create Your Shape, there's a lot of one-on-one components, but some people just prefer very direct and more high touch, which I get. And that's why I offer one-on-one as well, which very similar process and protocol, but a little bit more custom with the timeline and the approach. And so if you are more of a one-on-one person, you can grab one of my final spots for the year by emailing me at jennythenutritionist.com. All right, now let's get into it, because I'm going to walk you through my experience with being a recent foodie, the different type of foodies there are, and you can determine which one you are. I actually suggest knowing which type of foodie you are, because then I'm going to share ways to manage it depending on what type of foodie you are. So basically, I think I have been like a partial-ish foodie my whole life. I've always loved food, and naturally I will overeat if I didn't have any nutrition knowledge, or if I am just left to my own devices, which likely is one of the reasons why I never was as fit as how much I worked out initially. And I just didn't have any of the nutrition knowledge, which again is why I'm so passionate about teaching and emphasizing like education when I coach. But basically I would say I've kind of over the years decreased that foodie in me, because I prioritize just systemizing and being fit, and I would rather make things easier. So I definitely was someone who could just follow basically a meal plan and eat the same thing, repeat day after day, and then the following week I may change a meal or two and then repeat it. I loved that, and I loved those meals. Like I really enjoyed eating those meals. However, when I got pregnant, first 2 months, everything was kind of normal status quo. Third month though, my appetite skyrocketed. Not only was I hungry all of the time, I also was craving foods I typically would not crave at all. And I was craving them in a way where I needed to have them immediately. And also I didn't want a lot of like your typical healthy foods or meals that I would normally have. So that looked like I would need to eat every 2 hours. And I was like, I'm hungry and I'm going to get hangry if I don't eat ASAP. Cheese, I really can't do a lot of dairy. I get just side effects that I don't want. But man, did it not matter. And I wanted cheese all the time in every meal. I would say cheese and fruit. I think maybe it was like hydration with the fruit, but grapes with some mozzarella cheese, so good. Like the string cheese, yeah, so good. Deep fried chicken tenders, not something I have ever wanted in the past like 5 to 10 years. Deep fried anything just makes me feel sluggish and sick. But man, did I get a whole bag of like deep fried, like breaded chicken tenders to make, and French fries. I always love French fries. They're like my thing, but wanted French fries a lot more. Tacos. I mean, there was one night where it was 9 p.m. at night and I said, I need tacos right now. And I went to the store, got all the things to make tacos, came home, made tacos, and Aaron was like, I have never seen you so motivated before in my life. But that's really what it felt like. And so I know nutrition enough to know if I just let that go, that was all going to be a problem. And so I also was not in a space, like I was fatigued, felt awful, had to eat so often, like tracking just was not something that I wanted to do. And I know how to track, right? I know when to use that, but I also know you don't have to use it all the time, and you definitely don't have to use it just to maintain and not go overboard, which was my goal. So what I did was, one, I weighed myself every morning because I know too how much I should be gaining. And so I tracked my weight every morning to know if I was going overboard or not. So that really just kind of put some numbers to it, which I could talk all about that in another episode. I also let myself have the cravings I wanted, but I didn't get them mostly from ordering out. Because if I ordered out tacos, I know they would have come with lower protein, a lot more fat, and likely easier way to overeat on carbs as well. So I went to the store and I made my own more macro-friendly version. However, it was still, the macros were still higher than what I would typically do, if I'm being honest. Like I definitely was in a surplus at some point of it because of how big my appetite was. So during this like intense drive for food, and not just any food, for specific food, not being able to, I felt like I can't plan ahead because I don't know what I'm going to want to eat tomorrow. It's totally changing my daily structure of how many times I would typically eat. I'm eating so much more frequent. Like there were a lot of changes there, but the biggest thing was I was really relating to my clients and all ladies out there who would consider themselves foodies, where they don't like the idea of just being on a meal plan and eating the same thing over and over again, because they're like, wait a minute, food's such like brings so much joy in my life and I have lots of events with food, like I'm a foodie, does that work for me? So I was really relating to them. But those same people who are like, but I also am a fitness person, I want to look like I'm a fitness person, I want to look like I work out. And so during that, I was definitely keeping note of all the like clever things I was doing to manage both at the same time. Obviously, I'm in a little different scenario with the pregnancy, but it wouldn't have mattered. Remove that. This is the exact same thing that I would advise those foodies. The first thing though, is there are different types of foodies. And I think you want to know what type of foodie you are, because then you know how to solve for it. So here's a list of different foodies. And then after, I'm going to explain different ways to manage the food to still be fit and still work towards these fitness goals while being this type of foodie. Okay, the first one I feel like is your classic one, and I'm calling it a bougie foodie. These are the people who enjoy fine dining. They go to like Michelin star restaurants. They like the 8-course meal. I had a client one time who was going on a vacation in Mexico, and the whole time it was like a 3-day trip, and they planned 3 different like 8-course meals while we're there. Like that is why they were going. It was a foodie trip, high-end dining. Like that is I feel like your typical bougie foodie. So that's the first one. The second one is all food tastes good foodie. That was definitely me, my style, where you just like hang around the buffet. I remember realizing this where I have a friend who is way more picky. Like she's like, oh, I don't like chips. Like chips are not my thing. Like, and if she started eating a meal, she'd be like, oh, I don't like this. I'm just not gonna have like the rest of this. And I realized like, oh, I kind of like all food. There's really like some people are like, I don't like mushrooms. I'm like, yep, I like mushrooms. Like I really like it all. It's very rare that I don't like a food. And so you might be that type of foodie where like all food tastes good. I love food. Now the next category, I would put these in the same categories, but I think you identify differently. This I would call the family foodie. And so I've had people tell me, oh, like my family's like big foodies. But really what they mean is it's kind of like their hobby where they go out and they get wings together. That was my family too, growing up. They go out and get wings together. Or every event is a food event. And they have like grandma's, potato salad that has all of the fixins in it. And then they go to this ice cream place every Wednesday night. And when they go on vacation together, they're bringing all of the chips and dips out on the beach. Like everything is like food related. They're going to the fair and they're getting the cotton candy. And it's not necessarily like fine dining and delicious food. It's just like they enjoy food and everything kind of centers around food. There may be like hobbyists where it's like almost food is part of the like hobby or part of the event. So I would kind of consider both of these the same, like all food tastes good eater and also the family foodie eater. It's just like a different way to classify like overeating. Okay, the next is the volume foodie. So this foodie really is like once you start eating, you feel like you can't stop and you just desire more and more and more, and you just feel like you're still hungry. I would also put myself in that category too, where thinking back, like that is like my typical go-to, because again, all food tastes good, it keeps tasting good, and I would eat more and more. And then lastly, the sweet treat foodie. So this is the person who after every meal, they're like, I've got to have something sweet. I've got to have a dessert. I have a friend who would say, I have a separate stomach for ice cream. And so after her meal, she's like, I'm stuffed, but I could still have a like full serving of Brewster's ice cream or any ice cream because it's that good to her. So what type of foodie are you out of all those categories? Are you the bougie foodie? Are you the all food tastes good foodie? Are you the family foodie? Are you the volume foodie? Or are you the sweet treat foodie? Or are you something else? If you are, send me a message. I'm curious if I missed any. Okay, now let's talk about how to manage these now that you've identified which one you are. And you may not be any of them. And if so, great for you. Now I'm going to go through each one to give suggestions on ways to manage it. But the 3 things that all of them will help is first, tracking your weight daily. So getting on the scale every morning, like you brush your teeth, then you get on the scale. Because that is going to show you like it'll give you like a direct behavioral change because then you can think about, what did I do yesterday that is causing the scale to change today? Now, there is an art to this because there is reading the scale and knowing how to read the scale and whether something's water retention, inflammation from certain foods, or if it is gaining body fat over a trend. And I spent a whole week on this in Create Your Shape, teaching ladies how to read the scale, and then I have them weigh, and then I have them tell me why the scale is going up and down. So they really learn it and really understand how to use the scale as a tool and not just whether it's like, oh, this is good or this is bad. but it does really help to be like, oh, I understand yesterday or a few days ago, I overate and I ate in a surplus, or I didn't and it was just water retention. Now the scale's going back down. It really helps you manage gaining body fat or not gaining body fat from these different foodies. The next thing is to view it as, how can I do both? How can I have this foodie version of myself, but still reach this fitness goals? Like, how can I do both? And I'm going to have to sacrifice on both sides, and knowing what that sacrifice looks like and making it a little more concrete. So how can I make this food still be delicious while hitting my macros? Like, that's my version of it. How can I do both to create the shape I want, but also fill this like need of wanting food to taste good? And then lastly, becoming macro savvy. This is actually something I just worked with one of my one-on-one clients, Anna, with. And what we did was we listed out all of the things that she was still desiring and wanting to make in her weekly routine. And then actually going in and figuring out, okay, can we make that work, or do we need an alternative? Do we need to remove this? Or what portion of this can we fit in? Or maybe we can swap it out on days to be like really intentional, so she feels like complete and balanced with food, but she's still able to build her shape. This is like one of the best things you can do when it comes to building your shape. And what that means is not only like, it's not tracking macros, but it's understanding food with macros to be able to adjust portion sizes by estimating, be able to swap things out throughout your day. This is something I really emphasize in Create Your Shape with the education. So that way, I just had someone in there check and say, like, I feel like I'm not sacrificing at all, that I just have the knowledge to be able to like make decisions throughout my day that fit both needs. And that's really the goal. So those are the 3 ways that I would suggest every foodie to help manage like being fit while being a foodie. But let's get into each of those. So if you're a bougie foodie, typically at restaurants, when you go and do your 8-course meal, it's going to be lower in protein, higher in fat, and I would say like moderate carbs. So throughout the rest of your day, you're going to want to really decrease your fats. You might even go like just trace fats, like 0 fats, and get higher protein in. You may even do like a protein fast for breakfast if you know you're going to like an 16-course meal later on that's going to be heavy. You could also reduce from carbs, especially if you know, okay, I'm going to be going way over my fats for the day, so let me pull a little from my carbs. Typically, you don't have to worry about volume eating because the portions are so small, but that's something to consider too. Next thing with this is make it your thing. If you're like, oh, my vice of overeating is these foodie restaurants, then I also wouldn't make it, okay, every night I'm doing this, or every night I'm being a foodie. Maybe it's once per week, or maybe it's 2 times per week. I feel like that would add up. But really make your thing of like, oh, I don't eat that unless it's good. I've started doing this with bakery type food. Like if it's like pastries at a grocery store, no, I'm not doing that. But if it's pastries at like a nice New Yorker bakery place, then yeah, I would consider it more, but like, it's like an absolute no from a grocery store. Decide how often you're going to do it. So I have a client who started dating a chef, and she was like, oh, I gained a lot of weight because we were constantly going to these nice fine dining restaurants, 2-3 times a week. But then also we were cooking at home and kind of that same style. And then I started gaining weight because obviously you're overeating. So deciding, okay, how many times am I going to do this per week? And then outside of that, I'm going to have way more directional, create your plate, hitting my macros meals. And then lastly, for the bougie foodie, estimate the macros once, and then I would not track while you're at this nice restaurant. There's too many variables to be that specific, but I could almost guarantee most of these restaurants, you could estimate 1 or 2 meals, and it's probably going to be the same throughout all of them. It's going to be low, moderate protein. It's going to be high fat and then moderate carbs, but try to like guesstimate that amount, because then you can just get savvy with the rest of your day and just be even more specific. Okay, next up, the all food tastes good / the family foodie. So for this, make boring food taste good. Like this is what I did, and this has really helped me. Dressings, I love dressings. I love saucings. They are so high in fat, it makes it so easy to go over how much you need per day. And so I got savvy. If you guys are on my email list, you saw that I sent out a ton of Greek yogurt dressing options that are delicious. But that's a great example. Adding a bunch of like seasonings and spice, or how you cook something to make it better. The air fryer has changed the game for me. I like things crispy. So again, getting savvier with how can I make this food that is gonna help me hit my macros and work towards my goals. How can I make it taste better? Alternatives like sauces I just talked about, but even the French fries I mentioned. When I was craving French fries, I could have gone and got French fries from Burger King, but instead I went to Costco and I looked at the label, and are they perfect? No. But are they way better than the French fries from Burger King? Yes. And are the ingredients better? Yes. And so I had those that I could make at home. I know some people who love ice cream, they make the like homemade ninja ice cream. I haven't done that, but I know that's a big thing. Again, there's so many alternatives. Chips, I used to be a huge chip person. Then I went to the grocery store and literally just studied the labels and be like, what's in this? What are the macros in this? Found a great one. Now I love the Siete chips. The next thing is portion control. This is really going to be the biggest thing, because if you're out and about and if you're at family events or other people's making the food, if you're at a restaurant, it's just going to be way bigger portions and way denser. So if you have it, you're typically going to go over on what you need. So this means cutting things in half, maybe splitting a meal or splitting the dessert with another family member, or just having one bite of everything. That's typically my go-to at weddings. I'll get one of every dessert and they'll just have one bite of everything. There's so many ways to get savvy, but you have, if you're doing that, then you have to reduce the portions in order to make it work. Of course, always creating your plate. If you're at a restaurant, if you're at a family event, or just any type of event, creating your plate's always going to make it way more manageable. And then estimating macros. This is again where I go to the skill of estimating, because in becoming macro savvy, which I have ladies in Create Your Shape do a macro quiz. Because of this, it kind of forces you to start estimating for these specific types of things. That's it for that type of foodie. Now let's get into the volume eater. So the volume eater, again, like you just want to keep eating. Always go back to create your plate. Creating your plate meaning getting your portion of protein, your carbs, and your vegetables. The protein in the vegetables are going to help you be satiated, so you don't feel like you have to keep eating more and more and more, like you're never satisfied. Generally, I find it's always from not getting enough protein in. So always creating your plate. And then, I just had a perfect example of this in Create Your Plate with voluminous foods. Meaning, the perfect example of this is I had a client, she's in a deficit, right? So she is cutting back on food and she was feeling hungry and it's hard for her to stick to it. And so I said, okay, let's put you on a meal plan, because I've created a meal plan that has the most voluminous foods so you won't be hungry. Within days of being on it, she's like, this is amazing. It's delicious. I don't feel so hangry. It's easy to stick to. I don't have to think. And she loved it. So this is just an example of like how important having like voluminous foods is. And I'm going to explain what that is. So I feel like the very baseline of this is just having real foods. Of course, can you make it work? Can you hit your macros with all these different types of foods? Yes, you can, but will it set you up to be hungrier? Yes. And so if this is your problem, then that's the number one thing you want to change. 80 to 90% real food. So that means like, was it pulled from the ground, trees, like fresh meat, fish, like real food. So that's like your potatoes, your rice, your couscous, your quinoa, and not your bread in your tortilla shells and your crackers and your chips. That's just gonna be denser. It will make you hungrier. So swap those out. It doesn't mean you can't always have them, but make it the majority real foods. And then if you are in a deficit phase and you're a volume eater, then you can get even more fine-tuned with that in the real foods. Definitely you want to have 90% or more real foods if you're in a deficit phase, because you're already going to be so much lower on calories. But example of this is like protein. Protein powder, so a protein shake, is not going to be as satiating as like chicken breast. So that might mean you don't use it as much and you add more real foods in. Carbs, like rice and potatoes, are going to get you so much bang for your buck versus that tortilla shell that I just talked about, or even versus other carbs like quinoa. Strawberry and watermelon, they are so much more voluminous than bananas or cherries. And then you have like leafy greens. You can have so many leafy greens, or broccoli for lower carbs versus your like Brussels sprouts and carrots are going to be more dense. So you can get more fine tuned with each of these macros, even beyond just your typical real foods. All right, let's get into the last one, sweet treat foodie. So first, whenever I see ladies who are really crave sweets, generally it's telling me that you're deficient, because that's typically what happens when we aren't getting enough nutrients. We're going to like crave quick carbs and sugar. So I would solve for that first. Typically that means like step one, eating enough, or it could be checking blood work, getting a multivitamin in. But eating enough, that is one of the reasons it's the first step in Create Your Shape, because it is so important, and generally it solves most of the sweet treat foodies. However, with that, I would say, how many times per week are you having the sweet treat? I would say fit in like 2 to 3 per week, but schedule it out so that way it's not like every meal, every single time. And then really think of, okay, how can I get alternatives in? And maybe that's the Ninja Creamy versus the ice cream. Or I like to do a coconut yogurt bowl and then I add in some like fruit or coconut, like shredded coconut and some cacao nibs. Like you can get really savvy with it. Or sugar-free jello with whipped cream and strawberries on top. Or like dark chocolate. Like some of these things aren't really even treats when you think about it, and something you could fit in maybe every day. But if you're definitely doing more something that's like classified as a dessert, then I would limit that, because it's going to make it harder to fit it in, and you don't want to train yourself to keep desiring these sweets after every meal, because then you're just like recreating that habit and enforcing that habit. The other thing is, if you're out and about, let's say if you go to these dinners or if you go and get ice cream and you're doing it outside of your house, it's always going to be higher carbs, higher fat, and it goes back to portions. And maybe that means you're splitting it, or you're just having a bite of this and that, or you are saving it, you're getting it, and then you're only doing half of it, and then you're freezing the rest of it for the next time. That would save you some money too. But the whole point of any of these, or any foodie that you are, it's not about thinking, oh, I just need to stop doing that. I just need to cut that part out of my life, or, oh, I can't do it because I can't only have one or the other. But it's instead thinking, I need to solve for the root issue. I need to identify who I am, what I enjoy, and then solve for that root issue. And a lot of time, we've just never thought about it like that. We're not educated enough to know how to do that, or we don't have like the protocols or the tools to be able to do that. And so that's exactly why I help my ladies do this in Create Your Shape, because it is really something that we want to make sustainable for the long term. And we want to consider, okay, what do we value? And we also value being fit, having our shape represent that. And so how do we make both work by using both science and strategy in structure? So if you need help with this, then you need to be in Create Your Shape, because this is exactly part of what we do. So you can join us right now at the link in the show notes, or go to jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape. And again, the final spots for one-on-one are also available if that interests you more, which you can email me at jenny@jennythenutritionist.com. And I will see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.